Hello guys and welcome to this edition of AI Governance Engineering. Myself Gavin, and today we're going to be looking at one of the most important updates in the world of AI governance, and the title is EU drops new AI risk management rules. So here's something you need to know if you're developing or buying AI systems in the EU public sector. On November the 11th this year, the European Data Protection Supervisor just dropped a 55-page technical guidance that fundamentally changes how EU institutions need to think about AI risk management. And what makes this really interesting is that this isn't about the AI Act. This is about something potentially more challenging, making sure your AI systems actually comply with data protection law throughout their entire life cycle. So here's what's happened. On November the 11th, 2025, the EDPS, that's the European Data Protection Supervisor, published brand new guidance specifically for EU institutions, bodies, offices and agencies. We're talking about comprehensive risk management guidance for artificial intelligence systems that process personal data. This is a substantial document at 55 pages long, and it's built on the ISO 31000/2018 risk management methodology, specifically adapted for AI systems. Now, this comes just a couple of weeks after they updated their generative AI guidance on October the 28th, and it's part of their broader AI strategy that they launched this year when they stood up their new artificial intelligence unit. The EDPS is operating in a dual role. Now they're both the Data Protection Supervisor and the Market Surveillance Authority under the EU AI Act. But here's the key thing you need to understand. This guidance we're talking about today is specifically about data protection compliance under Regulation 2018/1725, and that's the EU DPR, not the AI Act requirements. So these are two separate regulatory frameworks. The AI Act deals with product safety, risk categories and market surveillance. This EU DPR guidance deals with protecting personal data and fundamental rights. And here's what matters. EU institutions have to comply with both. They work together, but they're distinct requirements. So who does this impact? We're talking about EU institutions, bodies, offices and agencies, basically the entire EU public sector. If you're developing AI systems, procuring AI systems from vendors, deploying AI tools, or processing personal data through AI in any of these organizations, this guidance applies to you. That includes everyone from data protection officers to IT project managers to procurement specialists. Okay, so why does this matter? Because this guidance is essentially telling EU institutions that hoping your AI system is compliant isn't good enough anymore. You need systematic risk identification. You need specific technical mitigation measures. You need established documentation standards. And you need a defined accountability framework. This is the end of hope-based compliance. You now have an official framework for conducting data protection impact assessments for AI, and there's no more guesswork about how to properly assess AI risks from a data protection standpoint. So let me walk you through how this framework actually operates, because it's pretty sophisticated. The document starts by mapping out the complete AI lifecycle into 9 distinct phases: inception and analysis, data acquisition and preparation, development, verification and validation, deployment, operation and monitoring, continuous validation, reevaluation and retirement. At each phase, different data protection risks can materialize. This full lifecycle approach is crucial because risks don't just appear at deployment, they can emerge at any stage. Now here's where it gets interesting. The guidance identifies what they call interpretability and explainability. So basically, if you can't explain how your AI system works and interpret its decisions, you can't ensure compliance with any of the other principles. So that's your foundational requirement right there. And there's an important distinction. Interpretability means understanding the internal workings of your model, while explainability means being able to explain specific decisions to users, and you need both. The guidance then breaks down into 5 major risk categories, each tied to core data protection principles. First, we've got fairness, which deals with bias and discrimination. Under fairness, they identify 5 distinct risks: bias caused by lack of data quality in training data, bias in the training data itself, overfitting to the training data, algorithmic bias where the design produces biased results, and interpretation bias where humans draw incorrect conclusions from model outputs. The mitigations here are concrete and actionable things. like representative, diverse training datasets, statistical bias detection techniques, fairness-aware algorithms, and regular bias audits using tools like IBM's AI Fairness 360. Second is accuracy, covering correct outputs and data quality. They focus on three main risks: inaccurate personal data output, including hallucinations from large language models, unclear information from AI providers creating a transparency gap, and inaccurate output due to data drift over time. You address these through high-quality training data protocols, testing against edge cases, hyperparameter optimization, data drift detection, regular model retraining, and human-in-the-loop systems. Third, data minimization, and this is where there's real tension. AI systems need massive data sets, but privacy law requires you to only process necessary data. So you've got this fundamental paradox. The guidance offers technical solutions, data sampling strategies, synthetic data generation, anonymization and pseudonymization, pre-assessment of what data is actually useful, and optimized feature selection. Fourth is security, focusing on confidentiality and integrity. They identify three specific risks: AI outputs disclosing training data through model inversion or membership inference attacks, data breaches from massive dataset storage, and personal data leakage through APIs. The countermeasures get quite technical: differential privacy, encryption, synthetic data for training, secure API design with multi-factor authentication, comprehensive logging and monitoring, and regular penetration testing focused on AI-specific vulnerabilities. And fifth, data subject rights, tackling the really hard problem of access, rectification, and erasure when data is embedded in models. The core challenge is, how do you delete data that's been absorbed into neural network parameters? The guidance discusses metadata tracking, data retrieval tools, and machine unlearning by retraining from scratch and approximate unlearning through targeted parameter updates. They're realistic. For some complex models, complete data removal might not be technically feasible. Now let's talk about procurement, because buying AI systems raises different issues than building them yourself. The guidance gives specific requirements for what you must include in your calls for tender. You need technical architecture documentation explaining how the system works, transparency and explainability documentation so you can understand the model's decisions, details on cybersecurity measures, complete data governance practices including where training data came from, validation and testing results with specific metrics showing how the model performs, and information about training data provenance, which is its origins and quality. So here are the specific questions you should be asking vendors. What type of AI architecture did you use and why did you choose it? Where does your training data come from and how did you ensure it's suitable? How did you test for bias and what mitigation steps did you take? What are the specific statistical accuracy metrics across different demographic groups? And how do you ensure model integrity against attacks? What validation procedures did you use with what results? Can you actually demonstrate that your system is interpretable and explainable? And these aren't nice to have questions, these are requirements for proper procurement under this guidance. Throughout all of this, documentation is critical. You need to document your complete AI system architecture, record all training data sources and the quality checks you performed, document your bias assessment process and what mitigation steps you took, keep detailed validation metrics and results, record what security measures you implemented and when, and establish clear procedures for how you'll handle data subject rights requests. This documentation isn't just for your own reference. When the EDPS comes asking how you've addressed these risks, this is what they'll want to see. So what should you be monitoring as this guidance gets implemented? First, watch for how this integrates with the EU AI Act requirements that are rolling out in phases through 2026 and 2027. And we're going to see practical questions about how these two regulatory regimes work together in practice. Second, keep an eye on enforcement. The EDPS has enforcement powers and can issue fines for non-compliance. As they start supervising AI systems more actively in their new role, we'll probably see some early enforcement actions that clarify how strictly they're interpreting this guidance. Third, watch for updates to the technical annexes. The document includes metrics and benchmarks for evaluating AI systems, things like Blue scores for natural language processing, ImageNet for computer vision, Rouge for text summarization. And as AI technology evolves rapidly, these technical references will need periodic updating. And fourth, There's a big open question about international data transfers. The guidance touches on using third-party AI models and APIs, but there's more work needed on how to handle compliance when your AI training data or your model itself involves transfers outside the EU. Okay, so what should you actually do with this information? First thing, if you're working at or with an EU institution and you're anywhere near AI systems or data protection, download this guidance document immediately. It's publicly available on the EDPS website, and don't just skim it or skim over it. This is a technical reference document you'll need to actually work with. Second, if you're a DPO or in a data protection role, start mapping your organization's current AI systems against this framework. The document includes helpful checklists in Annex 3 for both development and procurement scenarios. So go through those systematically for each AI system you're using or planning to use. Third, if you're in procurement, you need to update your tender requirements for AI systems right now. The guidance gives you specific documentation requirements to include in calls for tender. Use them, and don't accept vague assurances from vendors about compliance. You're going to need the specific technical evidence this guidance describes. Fourth, start building your documentation infrastructure now. When the EDPS comes asking how you've addressed fairness risks or implemented data minimization for an AI system, you need to have detailed technical documentation ready to go. Start creating those records as you implement systems, not retroactively when someone asks for them. So thanks for listening, guys, to this edition of AI Governance Engineering. I'm Gavin, and if you found this detailed breakdown valuable, hit the like button and subscribe for more plain English explanations of AI governance developments.